the brand new BMW M2 CS, the ultimate version of the baby M car. And everyone's been saying that it's, well, too big, too expensive, too chunky and fat, too heavy, too pedals, and too little of the ethos of this.
And that was my first thought as well. The new car clearly hasn't got the purity of the previous M2 CS, let alone a 2002. Except, I think we might have been thinking about this M2 CS all wrong. This episode is driven by Hagerty, who, in case you don't know, provide car insurance that's designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. So, if you have a special car that you don't drive every day, like one of these perhaps, then take a trip to hagerty.com/Henry. Or pick up the phone, give them a call, and speak to a like-minded enthusiast about a quote.
I thought we should start off with a bit of, well, M2 CS history, because it can trace its ancestry all the way back to one of these.
This is a BMW 2002, the first sporty, small two-door coupe from the Neue Klasse generation. All the O2s had an inline four-cylinder M10 engine under the bonnet, but the 2002 came about after a couple of BMW bigwigs discovered that they had both modified their personal cars with 2-litre engines. It was produced from the late 1960s through to the mid-70s, meaning the M2 CS can arguably trace its lineage back even further than the M3. The performance versions of the 2002 were the TI, which stands for Turismo Internazionale, the TII, which swapped carbs for fuel injection, and the famous Turbo. But this is none of those. Imagine instead a world in which BMW had created a 2002 CSL.
Oh, this is great! In an age where it feels like the market is almost sort of saturated with resto mods, it's easy to forget that people have been doing resto mods for years, just as personal projects, like this one. So this car is something I've wanted to drive for a long time, because I've known about it for a long time, because it belongs to a friend of mine, Will Beaumont. We've worked together, we've been friends, and he loves BMW so much he set up his own BMW magazine called Berg. It's beautiful, go and buy a copy. The little engine's been bored out to 2.1. It's running twin 45 Delortos, so it sounds fantastic.
Will says it's making about 160 brake horsepower and around 150 pounds-feet of torque, but by modern standards it probably also weighs less than a dose of Ozempic.
It's got an amazingly tight little 5-speed gearbox on it. In fact, everything about it feels pretty tight. The lever-slip diff is clearly wound very tight. The suspension's firm, so it's got Bilsteins. So it's sort of Group 5 specification. So you certainly feel the bumps, but also it corners really flat. It's a proper little sort of touring car on the road. It's so dinky in here. This amazing glass house, which I know we always say with old cars, but it's just brilliant. And I just love the look of this car. It's so cool, isn't it? Just love all the details that he's done in here. Beautiful gear knob, this wheel is just absolutely perfect. Recaro SPGs, but then painted to match the exterior on the back. If somebody wants to do a 2002 resto mod, they could do a lot worse than, well, taking this as the template. Oh, we should probably drive the M2 CS, the new car. Just a couple more miles in this though. And so we come forward over half a century to this, a car that I think has got a bit of an identity issue. You see, we all understandably think about a 2 Series as a baby BMW, but just because this has got the fewest doors and the shortest wheelbase does not make it a my first M car. Far from it. For a start, it doesn't look like a baby, does it, at all? I mean, if ever there was a car that said thug, I think this is it.
While it's not a pretty car, I think the CS editions really resolve the standard car's shape into the vision that was evident in the original M2 sketches done by the car's designer Jose Casas.
Those big arches, that ducktail, the deeper dam at the front, it all works, I think. It just gives it so much road presence.
I love the bespoke CS forged wheels too, and the carbon roof, but I did find myself hankering for one little detail. The one aesthetic disappointment are the lights, because in recent CS cars we've had, well, yellow highlights in the lights, and that's been really nice. It's become something of a stylistic theme, and I just don't get why they couldn't have done it for this. Overall though, it looks very grown up and serious. And then we come to the numbers, the very big numbers.
523 brake horsepower, 479 pounds-feet of torque. That's 50 brake horsepower more than the standard M2, 37 pounds-feet more. 0 to 60, well, crucially, that now dips under 4 seconds, 3.8 seconds to 62 miles an hour. That is really quick.
And it was those power and torque figures that really made me reframe the whole car. Go back just a handful of years with those sort of numbers and you're into very senior sports car, even junior supercar territory. Take, for example, this generation of Aston Martin Vantage, represented here by the GTE version because that's what was in the toy box. 503 brake horsepower, so slightly less, and an identical 479 pounds-feet of torque. Even quite similar weight numbers. Audi R8 V10, not the Plus version, kind of mid-500s brake horsepower, a lot less torque, and again, similar weight. You have to go a long way up even the current 911 range to find comparable power and torque outputs. There's even, well, a McLaren that you could compare it to. Not this one, it's the Speedtail, because again that's what was in the toy box, but the 540C. There is nothing babyish about any of these. And neither is there about the new M2 CS.
It's so fast, this. The response from this engine, obviously it's turbocharged. 3 litres, 2 monoscroll turbochargers, but the response, the throttle response, is absolutely right there. I think helped by the fact that it's got stiffer engine mounts than the standard M2 as well. The sound it's not that musical, it's quite gruff. There's a decent edge to it, there is definitely sound there. There's a hard note to it that's kind of vaguely reminiscent of older naturally aspirated engines as well. It's definitely got a bit of straight six about it, which is nice. It's just got so much performance. And yet the nice thing is, because it's got the torque as well, actually you can just rein it back in. So on a damp road like this, well, you can still travel at a huge pace, but just not worry that M-diff quite so much. But this car isn't just about the straight line performance either, much though it might be a struggle to tell that from the spec sheets. This one is for the standard M2, and this one is for the M2 CS. And in this little section down the bottom here for driving dynamics, they are identical. Exactly the same for wheels, suspension, DSC, all that stuff. There's not a word changed, and I just don't get it. If this was Porsche, well, they'd be all over the changes that have been made, because, believe you me, there have been changes.
For a start, the ride height has been lowered by a full 8mm.
What's more, the dampers are actually from the CSL, and it's got stiffer springs in there, and obviously they've retuned the dampers for this. The front wheels, they've got more camber on them, which is the reason the steering just feels that much more, well, alert. Obviously those stiffer engine mounts play a part as well, and then there's all the software tuning. So it's stuff you can't see on the spec sheet, but the M differential, the way they've retuned that so that, well, it can do all sorts of things to help it turn in better or lock up sooner. it really can change the feel of this car a huge amount, but you can't see it on the spec sheet.
The wheel sizes might be the same, but these new forged items for the CS are lighter, and paired with the admittedly very expensive optional carbon ceramic brakes, that's a decent saving on unsprung rotational mass.
It all adds up to a car that just feels so alive, I think. It's kind of happy to be steered from the rear, but you can do it at little angles as well, which I think is so impressive. It's not just an absolute hooligan. It's got real precision to it, despite all that torque going through only the rear wheels and the shorter wheelbase. This is a car that really has got nuance to it. It just feels beautifully front-engined, rear drive. I actually like the steering. I don't like this steering wheel. I don't understand why they make it so chunky. I've got pretty large hands, and even I just find it too big. So I wish they would get rid of it. I can only assume there is somebody on the BMW board who particularly loves this steering wheel. Why, I don't know. I like the paddles. The paddles are pretty good, actually. So they've got the sort of the golf ball dimples on this side and the braille on that side, which I think is a nice touch, a nice tactile touch. And of course, we've still got this lever down here, which is not the greatest to use, but you can shift down and up using it if you want to.
That does, however, lead us fairly predictably to this thorny issue.
One of the big, disappointments, questions perhaps, about this CS is why no manual option? And it all comes down to the strength of the gearbox, really, because the manual isn't as strong as the auto, and it's nothing to do with power, as we saw in the 3-litre CSL homage, which obviously got the 6-speed manual. It's to do with torque, because that car and the standard M2 only go up to 406 pounds-feet, which is a lot less than this.
It would have meant a drop of 15% or 73 pounds-feet to accommodate the manual. These buckets also don't work very well with 3 pedals because of the carbon carbuncle on the seat. Although I am a fan of them in general, as they have fantastic support, can be set nice and low, and have just the right amount of padding for both comfort and feel. The rest of the interior, well, retaining back seats is practical, getting rid of the central armrest and cup holders is not practical. Oh, and I do really like these CS logos ghosted into the carbon that show up at night and flash red if you open the door with the engine running. Finally, there are a couple of buttons in here we should talk about. The first one you need to press is the M mode button, which lets you select Sport, deactivating the ADAS gubbins like lane keep assist.
In terms of the dynamic settings for this, obviously every day just leave everything in comfort. But as soon as you reach a decent piece of road, I think you want everything in Sport, apart from the brakes, which I've left in comfort because I think it's just nicer, otherwise it gets a bit too jumpy on the pedal. And then you can turn the traction control off, the DSC off, but then use the variable traction control, which just works so well. And then you can put all that on one of the buttons up here. So it's easily accessible all the time. Although when everything's set on comfort and you're just sort of pottering around, it does feel pretty wide. Somehow, as soon as you put things in Sport and you start driving harder, leaning on the tyres, then the precision comes to you, the steering comes to you, you feel that extra camber. Suddenly, I don't think it feels like a big car at all.
Yes, you can feel it's 1700 kilos at times under hard braking or in the wet on the edge of grip. But that din weight isn't heinously heavy by today's standards, and mostly it all feels very well controlled.
It really is so good to drive.
It's not that I wouldn't love a lighter, cheaper, smaller, manual M car, something splitting the difference between these two. But I also think the desire for that car shouldn't blind us to what a fun, capable, great car this M2 CS is.